Welcome to the Kolbecast, episode 288. Thank you for joining us. Today, friend of the Kolbecast, Erica Treat, joins Bonnie and I to talk about Kolbe's lesson plans. In this first of two parts, we explore Kolbe's well-loved lesson plans and how they can help us to make homeschooling successful in our homes. We hope that you'll enjoy the show.
Hi there, I'm Bonnie, Kolbe homeschooling mom of 4 lads and lasses, liturgical musician, popcorn, and podcast fanatic.
And this is Stephen, homeschooling father of 5 and director of development for Kolbe Academy.
Good morning, Stephen. How are you?
Doing well. It's rainy here, which is unusual. We haven't had rain for a while, but now everything is cool and soggy for a few days. So that's kind of nice.
Very nice. Yep. Kids, when I ask them at the end of the day what some of the good things about the day have been, several times they've said the rain. So it's been nice. Yep. Well, speaking of nice, we've got friend of the Kolbecast, Erica Treat, back with us today. Hi, Erica, and welcome back.
Hi, thank you for having me again. I always love to be here with the two of you and sometimes other people as well, but it's nice to be here.
We always love having you come visit with us, Erica. We'll take any opportunity to get to visit with you. It's a real pleasure and treat. Erica is here to walk us through how Kolbe's course plans guide homeschooling, support parent formation, provide grade level progression, and include recent improvements to make teaching easier. This is the first of a 2-part conversation, which together we hope will show how Kolbe's course plans provide structure for students, guidance for parents as educators, and ideas for integrating school into family and liturgical life. So to set the scene, Erica, you're working on a blog series about navigating traditional and digital homeschool course plans. Tell us about that.
At the beginning of the school year, I was asked to come and talk about our course plans and the digital homeschool courses at a parent partnership meeting. And from that, people asked me if we had anything that we could just place out in the world that would be available and a little more evergreen as a reference for Kolbe families and Kolbe home educators. So the blog series is about helping parents see the plan clearly, feel confident, and understand how the course plan can support academics, but also as you sit down with it, you can see it in the context of your broader family calendar, and even maybe the liturgical calendar too, if you would like to do that.
Yeah, the course plans for me were one of the big draws to Kolbe when we were new to homeschooling. I'm sure many of our listeners are familiar with the course plans, but for those who are not, they're very detailed, week by week, sometimes day by day. Here's what you do for this course, for this, and of course you can adapt them, but they help you stay on track, know what to do in a day. It's a good way of indicating, like, for those who need this kind of reassurance, this is enough for today. They're hugely beneficial to making this whole thing work. So that was one of the things that was a big draw for me, along with the integration across all the subjects, which comes up a lot in our conversations. So the course plans are our friends, and we can talk about all aspects of them. I can share my experience if it's helpful about how I organize mine and so forth. But I also wanted to point out the blog on Kolbe's website. Erica, you've been contributing a lot to that blog here, and it's a great resource for learning more about Kolbe's curriculum and how to make it work for each family. As we've had our whole series of conversations about various aspects of the curriculum, there are corresponding blog posts to all of those that we've linked in all our show notes. Do you want to say more about the renewed focus on the blog for you as you've been working through all of this as well?
I think part of it was just the desire to have things in different formats. I know for me, listening to podcasts, I can do that while I'm, doing chores or other things. But sometimes I like to just read something, or I need a visual to help me kind of navigate, or I remember a lot of things visually, like I'll get the image in my mind. So part of that is just to give people different modes to interact with Kolbe's curriculum or conversations about the curriculum, not so much actually digging into the course plan, but having a conversation about why we did history this way, and then you can read about it if you'd like to, or you can download a lot of the blogs, and these podcasts have a type of content offer that can be downloaded. So it might be a sample from a week of a course or something like that. So you can kind of engage with it in a few different ways. So that's why, really, just to give people different ways to have a conversation with us about our curriculum, which I know all of us love. So, and well before I worked for Kolbe, I loved the curriculum, and those course plans, you refer to them as friends. That's how I feel about them when I'm with them. So,
I like that you mentioned that, brought that up, because I just jumped right in. You've been with us on many conversations on the Kolbecast, but for folks who have not, for whom this is the first time hearing you, you're a longtime Kolbe mom. You work in the curriculum department now as project manager. You've been an advisor. You've done all sorts of things for and with Kolbe for a long time. So there's some background for folks who are not aware. Do you want to add to that at all?
No, I don't really think I have anything big to add to it, but yeah, I have been in Kolbe, the Kolbe ecosystem for a very long time. And so when I say that I love the curriculum or I love something about Kolbe, it comes from like the perspective of a parent who's graduated a couple of kids from Kolbe and used Kolbe for a very long time, as a parent. So I feel like I understand that perspective. And we bring a lot of that into just all of our development in curriculum too. We have a lot of home educators, experienced homeschool parents. They're not necessarily working full time. In fact, most of the curriculum developers are not full-time staff because they're educators. They're either teaching at Kolbe, and or homeschoolers themselves. So they're bringing that love and care and understanding of that experience with them, and trying to develop things that people can use and love like we do, and make improvements where we've said, oh, I could use a little more guidance with grading writing. So we're bringing that in, stuff like that. So I guess that would be my addition, is that the things that we have with curriculum are being developed and led by people who know what it's like to use course plans at home with their children, and to use our course materials in other settings too, like a number of our teachers do, use the curriculum in online courses or async courses, and sometimes also with their kids, with their own kids in their own homeschool.
Yep. We all know it inside and out. So we're mainly talking today about the traditional and digital homeschool course plans from which the online course plans come, but that kind of separates it for those who are going through the courses with their kids as opposed to their kids being enrolled in the online classes. Is that a fair distinction, do you think? Or is there a way to refine it better than that?
No, I think that makes sense. Usually, when we're looking at the different modalities or course formats, the digital homeschool and the traditional homeschool, I feel like when I think of those two, they're very similar, because at the end of the day, you have the homeschooler educating the student, grading the work. And then when you look at async and online, you have a Kolbe teacher who you're having help you with some of those elements, or actually really all of them. You can hand over to them, which I was always grateful to do in certain subjects.
Mm-hmm. Same.
But then there were others where I really wanted to be the one doing the teaching, because if it was literature, sure, they could do some of the honor, like we used to have these honor seminars. So sure, they could do the honor seminar, but I wanted to be involved in that conversation in a much more hands-on way. So I think of those two formats in that way as well.
Okay.
I like the idea of, well, I like that we have these course plans, and that I know your team is so intentional about everything. It calls to mind something that's dear to my heart, is my TAC education where basically for more than 50 years now, every student has received the same education. It's the same. There's been tweaks, there've been changes, small changes, but there's this roadmap and ordering of everything that kind of guides you through. And then, of course, whether it's an online teacher kind of doing the implementation of it, or it's the
Mhm.
homeschooling mom or dad, but so there's that aspect of implementing and actually facilitating the education, but to have a beautiful roadmap, kind of to know where you're going, and to be able to stop in different spots or explore more deeply here, whatever is so nice though to have with the work that you're doing on these and have done. So they've been good for a while, but I know there's constant um, making them more easy to use for a better, richer.
Mhm.
So
Yeah. So when this episode drops, it'll be the middle of a school year. We're hoping, though, for this episode to serve as an evergreen sort of starting point for people who are beginning with Kolbe or at any point along the way, actually. So why is it a good time now to talk about this? I mean, you referred to it initially. Is there more to say about that? Why we're talking about this now?
Well, I was just thinking about, so we did have that parent partnership meeting in August, and that seems like the most natural time to talk about interacting with course plans and how to engage with course plans and plan your year in terms of the academic year calendar. But as a homeschooler, I would often start thinking about planning at the turn of the calendar year. That's when I started to think about what kind of goals I had ahead for myself and for my family, and what does the family calendar look like. We're not all tied to the academic calendar, for one thing. So there's that, but there's also just this time to prepare and think of things when you're not trying to jump into something brand new, or a new year. I don't know about uh, in in your homes, but for me, especially in the little years, it took us a good like 6 to 8 weeks a lot of times to get into our like battle rhythm for the year. As a You can tell I'm a military spouse.
battle rhythm. I like
So
that.
our battle rhythm, but it took us a month and a half. And during that time, that was not the best time for me to be thinking about planning, figuring out the basics of stuff. So as we were thinking about this, having this conversation now is like, this might be a good time. They've already found their rhythm for the year. They've likely already, if you haven't yet, that's okay. Especially if it's your first year or two homeschooling. It may take longer to find your rhythm. As my kids got older, that that sort of period of time that it took us to find our rhythm for the year decreased, to the point where they were in high school, and the first week we're figuring out that we're getting into our rhythm that week, and then after that we're done. We're already kind of into things a lot of the time, by the time my kids were older. But um, as you're doing all of those things and getting used to stuff, it feels like a lot to say, okay, I'm going to go sit down now and try to interact with how I'm going to plan my whole year, my whole year. That time where you're already feeling a lot of busyness. So that's one of the reasons why I thought, well, this is a nice time of year to sort of step back and talk about plans as we're approaching the end of the calendar year, and um, maybe have a little bit more breathing room and mind space to think about um, scheduling and planning and things like that, and goal setting.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Especially if it's new. Now we've had some time to be like, all right, here's how this actually works. Like when I was
Mm-hmm.
new and I was reading through everything, like not a whole lot of it stuck. Like, okay, I had to just kind of go through it to get the hang of it. So now we are at that point where we've been at it for enough now that we have a sense of here's how this goes. And that does make some room to be like, okay, going forward, I can see how this
Mm-hmm.
comes together. Here's how I'd want to do it next year, that sort of stuff. So it's a good, yeah, the timing is ideal. Yeah.
And earlier is better. Is like this last year we were looking at kind of some of our prior podcast talking about the practicality of homeschooling, and we saw like June was a big month for people to look at those, and August was a big month to look at those. But if we're planning, then we can plan in December, January. If you're that sort of person, that's great. If you want to wait until June, hey, the podcast is still here. You could
Mhm.
still come back. And if you're one of those August people that just is the way life is, then it's still there. You can still, but this way, everybody can, whether you like to be ahead of things, a little ahead of things, or in the midst of things, it's going to be around. So it's
Yep.
helpful.
Yep.
Even September people, we see you too. We
Yes, it's still
You're
fine. It
welcome
just,
too.
yes, you're good.
It's
Exactly.
Just
nice.
Exactly.
It's recorded. It's nice. That's kind of what we were talking about with the blog too. Like it'll be there, and then people can pick it up and interact with it when the timing is good for them. Same thing with us. They can listen to it, or maybe even re-listen to it as they're trying to. I used to try to find things to just give me some encouragement at different times of year, and sometimes January and February were really. I'm a planner naturally, but those were good times for me to kind of like get my juices flowing again because those can be hard months with with homeschooling.
yes.
Yes, they sure can. That has come up a few times.
Hmm.
All right, well, let's kind of go through these course plans, various aspects of them, starting with the grade level structure of these plans and the preparation for next stages. So, Erica, how do the course plans actually help kids build on what they've learned from year to year?
So, and I think people will be familiar with this. Each year is designed to kind of start for the last year left off, although most courses will have some review built in. And depending on what you do over the summer, sometimes people decide to go a little bit more quickly through um, those review sessions and things like math. Most math courses are built with that in. It's kind of some baked in review because they need it after having the summer off. But say you're doing some stuff over the summer and you don't need that, that would be okay too. But just the general design is to pick up where last year left off in subjects like math or English or other language arts things so they can revisit those concepts and then be ready to level up with the new academic year. And it helps to reinforce what they know and then prepare them to just move on to the next level. And parents can look at these plans and they can see the whole path too um, before them. And I felt like that made things less stressful for me. Like, yes, we're going to do what we need to do this year for this grade level. And that's how the progression is sort of designed intentionally to help each student get where they need to be in the different subjects every year.
Okay, so we have a roadmap for where we are, we know where we're going. It's not just about getting the work done, the academic work done. It's also that formation of basically virtue is what you're describing, right? The cultivation of these habits, like how we go about that work, in what other ways we grow from engaging in that task in an orderly way and
Mm-hmm.
building upon going on from there. Yeah.
I think so. I know it helped me develop in virtue too as a parent. Um, Having that schedule and having the calendar to follow, it helped me to become more orderly in my mind and in how I approached everyday life. So I think there are a lot of sanctifying and um, a lot of sanctifying things about being a parent and homeschooling, and sometimes it feels unpleasant, and we don't want we
Right.
don't want to grow, but, and our children don't want to grow either. So we can sympathize with them and their human condition
Hmm.
as we all grow together.
Yes.
I like some of the one of the other aspects that regularly comes up for like especially new homeschooling parents or people new to homeschooling is how much to do. So one of the other I think real benefits to a parent going through this is I mean, granted, each student is different, as we've talked about, but to have an idea of this, this is enough, or this is so maybe it's too much for your particular student, or maybe it's
Hmm.
not enough for a particular student, but at least it's again a judge of like, okay, you're you're fine. If you're working through this, doing your best, getting things out of it, you don't have to be panicked that I'm not doing so enough for my child or I'm asking way too much. Although, again, each student is different, but it's a map still. It's a guide.
I think that's especially helpful in those younger years when it actually doesn't take as long as like a typical brick and mortar school
Hmm.
day. So there's that inclination to think, oh, we are done way earlier than we thought we would be. Did we miss something? Did we do enough? That kind of thing.
It's nice that our plans don't have to say, okay, they don't have to account for 45 minutes or 50 minutes in a class every day of the week. So it's not like let's find activities to keep the kids from tearing apart the classroom, but just more focused on learning and what needs to be done for the week or the day.
So back in our early days of homeschooling, Kolbe published a parent support guide every year that gave suggestions on all sorts of stuff, including how to schedule a school day and about how long each of the various subjects should take, depending on age and so forth. So that information and a whole lot more is now available in the Help Center on the Kolbe website, which we'll have links to in our show notes. Okay, so on the topic of the course plans, they also lend a form of formation and support to the parent educators. Would you say a bit about that?
Sure. And what Stephen was saying about having that roadmap, I feel like it takes a burden off of the parents' shoulders because, first of all, they're not having to come up with that from scratch and create. I've created a number of courses over the years. It's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Um, it's a lot of work to do that. And even then, if you're doing this on your own and it's your first time building a course, am I doing everything I need to do? Have I thought of the different things? Well, we've pulled in, different subject matter experts and developers to to answer that question. Yes, this is enough. So not only is it, set out for you, but you have that reassurance that it's enough. So you know what to teach, when, and all of our course plans have exams and keys. So one way to evaluate it, but then there are other ways to evaluate it built in with homework and sometimes quizzes, depending on the course, stuff like that. Um, and also what we were talking about a little bit, the plans kind of act as a model. I was saying how I feel like I grew. Um, I grew by following the plans. It showed me a way, then I could model the plans modeled that to me, and I could model that to my children. And they show us how to structure lessons, a way that the work can be paced, guide discussions, help us with essay topics, and what sort of content we can expect from our students when they're writing those essays. So it gives parents a chance to focus on teaching well, um, so that they can get more confident in themselves as educators. And when they're doing their planning and their grading, leading projects and conversations, we kind of give them the supports within the course plans and also our additional things like our study guides or student and teacher guides that accompany many of our courses. Those are also really vital, especially in our high school humanities courses, where really, really valuable to have the questions. And I learned so much using those. I think even if you're going through the material um, for the second or third or fourth time, depending on what your background is and how many kids you have,
Yep.
feel like every time you get something new out of it, and there's more learning to be done by the parents, both in content and in just how to get through an academic year and maybe even an academic day, depending on how things are going.
Very true. Yeah. Everyone starts somewhere. So
Hmm.
these are hugely supportive. Also, your comment about going through them multiple times, finding things that you didn't pick up on before or doing it better than anyway, that's like rereading the primary sources that we talk about. So yeah, lots of connections there.
Some good advice that I got when I was really before I started homeschooling. It was preschool, but and I was taking it seriously as I feel I should have. But I got some great advice from someone who'd been homeschooling quite a bit longer than I had at that point, being, a month into it. And that was just take my job seriously.
Yep.
You're an educator, take your job seriously. If you wouldn't leave a meeting to go answer the phone, um, maybe, think about that when you're working with your kids or you're teaching your kids. Would you step out of the classroom to take a call or to do the dishes? you know um, so that's what she was mentioning, chores in particular. Like, it can be really easy to step aside and wash dishes in the middle of the workday or something like that. And of course, some of that does need to get done during sometimes when you're running your home cafeteria.
Right.
At that moment, you're the lunch lady and you do the dishes because that's part of your job, but or whatever. But so I'm not saying to, let everything pile up or anything. But at the same time, I think it was a good reminder to me to take my job seriously and to think about how I'm spending my time and how would I do this if I were in a paid work setting? Would I step out and take a call from my sister to chat about just some random things? you know, Probably not. I don't do that during work. So that's not something I would do during the school day. I would let my sister know, well, I'm teaching right now. So I'll call you after, call you later today after I'm done working. And it also, I think, helped because the people around me weren't homeschoolers, and it helped them to see that I was doing something important. And it messaged to my kids too that this is an important job that I'm doing with you. It's not like a side hobby or
Right.
something that I don't take seriously. I take your education seriously. I don't know. I thought that was good advice at the time to take my job seriously. And so it's something that I feel like helped me a lot over the years, especially in times where um, maybe other people weren't valuing what I was doing in the time that I was with my kids working with them. But it was a good reminder to me and very affirming that, this is a job. I'm an educator, and this is important work that I'm doing. So I should take it seriously. And I think that my kids respected what I was doing in that way too. So it was good for all of us.
Yeah.
Makes me think of a Stephen Covey Seven Habits of Highly Effective People principle of putting first things first. So, in
Mm,
that part of your life, if you're committed to the homeschooling, and it seems like you're right that like even with particular students, it's like your window of opportunity can be small at times. Like there's this time after breakfast before things get too crazy and tired. This has to happen now or it's not going to happen. So
hmm.
Yeah.
this has to take priority over other things which may be, valuable, but
Right.
that's not the priority right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Talking with my sister is very valuable. I
Yes.
love her a
Sure.
lot,
Of course.
but I don't need to do that during the time that I've scheduled for math um,
Right.
with my
Right.
kids.
Yes.
Yeah.
We'd have this structure. One of the selling points sometimes I feel like is, oh, it's so flexible. Homeschooling's so flexible. You just do whatever. Like, no, we're actually,
Well, I actually think the structure gives us flexibility too. Um, I've heard that used in terms of discipline, like parental discipline. I can't remember where I read it, but it was like imagine a bridge with no rails and how you might walk across that versus the freedom and comfort you feel walking across a bridge with rails.
Mhm.
Um, so kind of when we have those rails, we see where we can flex and where we can take a field trip today because or whatever, we can things come up in life and there's sometimes no choice in the matter. We all know that. But there are other times where we have the opportunity to be flexible. And I feel like when we have those sort of rails in that structure, it gives us sort of the breathing room to say, yeah, we can take a field trip today. We know where we're at. We're on track. Or you know what? Maybe today is not the best day. It's gonna derail things and bring chaos that we don't want in our, in our academics. But but I see what you're saying with that. We do want to have flexibility, but we also want to take it seriously too.
Yep. And the course plans help us cultivate that. Like we can see it's right there for us. This is what we need to accomplish today. Of course, we need to take factors into account, like somebody's not feeling well, or there's some appliance just broke, or the power is out or something. Like all those sorts of things happen, and we do what we need to during that time. But in the absence of those, we have this plan in front of us. I guess it's maybe there's that concept of we have made the decision already. So it's not like every day I'm going to decide, am I going to or am I not? No, I've already made that decision. This is what we're doing. So we don't need to spend a whole bunch of time thinking, is this what I'm doing today? Yes, I already know that we're doing it. So let's do it. Okay. What other ways do the plans support the parents?
So things like rubrics for essays. We talked about that a little bit and how we're building those out and improving those. Something that can be very helpful with the content itself are key points for lessons. Those are usually content focused. So I'll give you a summary of kind of the content that you're going to be engaging with that week. If you have not already read some of the material yourself, that can help guide you. And sometimes we don't, as a parent, have time to read the entire reading that our students doing for that week, or we aren't as familiar with it. So it gives us a good reminder of, oh yes, that's where we're at in the story. That's where we pick up. These are the key things that are happening and why they're happening, and often historical background and other elements of what's going on. It just gives us really good context for framing things and working with it with our students. We also have grading guidance. That's another area that we're building out some more. And some courses have, depending on the grade level, there's sometimes teaching tips in there in the course plans, enrichment ideas, particularly in the younger years. There are some really lovely enrichment ideas built in that the team has come up with to help make things a little bit more interactive sometimes for students at the stages where that's particularly beneficial. And then there are the daily and weekly breakdowns we've talked about a little bit too, so we can kind of see what's coming up. And I personally use those to build out checklists for my students. I would break them down into daily checklists so that they could use. I know some families take the course plans and hand the daily breakdowns to their students, and their students check them off. So they can kind of act like a day planner too. Or other students will take the plans and they write them into their planner, or some hybrid approach usually emerges once the students get older. So there's still room for kind of flexibility within the structure that we've talked about. Parents can follow exactly, or they can adapt in some ways. So they can use the plan as a guide for content and a teaching approach, but also just scheduling, nuts and bolts, kind of logistical. These are the pages you need to read today. How do you use those, Bonnie, with your scheduling in your homeschool?
I don't have any of the homeschool courses myself this year. So when I did that though, I mean, there were several years when I did, and I had multiple kids doing that. So it was important to me that they write down their assignments and their planners. And so when it got to the point when it was feasible for them to, we would look at the course plan together. I'd have it in a binder, and right here in front of us, and because I'd want them to be familiar with the outline of the plan, where to find information in the plan, so that if I was not able to answer a question at a certain time for whatever reason, they knew where to find it and they could move on with
Hmm.
what they needed to be doing. So they weren't just like high centered waiting for me. I
Yes.
when as soon as they showed um, an ability to do that for themselves, I tried to cultivate that. And so I wanted them to write their own work in their planners and also know their way around the course plan to find out, here we're in this week, or we'll put a sticky note on this, like a flag. I love post-it flags so much. They put a
Me
flag on
too.
which week we're on so they can find it, and all the sort of things where they could do for themselves as much as they could. So yes, and I mean when they were much younger, yes, I had almost like a chart that I would hand to them. But
Hmm.
when we started homeschooling, most of them were able to and were already in the habit of writing in their planners. So I wanted to keep that going. So I think that was a much
Yeah.
longer answer than you probably were anticipating. But um, and there were times when I was doing a high school course with my kids that I would give them these sections of the course plan that were just the work itself, not the answer keys or anything like that, of course, but I would make a set
Right.
for them so that they had their own binder, their own set of plans that they could work through.
Hmm.
So yeah,
I did that too. I had a separate binder with just the like the weekly, daily plan, the content the student should have access to,
right,
and not the exams and keys that the
right,
student should not have
right,
access to.
right. And those
But
high school
yeah,
courses are written like they're talking to the student a lot of the time. Like
they
that,
are.
that by that point, it's like, this is what you should be doing. You're talking directly to the student. So I wanted to
Right.
honor that. And I
Hmm.
figured I was trying to appeal to their sense of like, I can do this. This is my responsibility, and I'm able
Hmm.
to do this. And like they're talking to me like I'm an adult, or I'm a young adult, or I'm capable of doing this. And
Absolutely.
I wanted to underline that and affirm that for them. Yeah.
And I think a lot of the content in there too is really valuable context and sort of instruction beyond the actual books that they're reading. It gives a lot of really good background that's so valuable. And what if you were in a traditional classroom setting, the sort of things that the teacher would be lecturing on, or if you use the digital homeschool courses, a lot of that content may come up in the lectures, or at least some of that content that you see in the key points and those parts of the course plan would be maybe lectured on to some degree in the video lectures. So I think if you're not um, discussing those key points with your student, it's very valuable for them to read. It gives them a really good guide as they're approaching sometimes pretty complex content. So it
Hmm.
really helps to say, okay, this is what I'm looking for here. This is what you know, these are some of the takeaways that I should have. But no, I loved your answer, Bon.
Thank
I
you.
love hearing how different. I love hearing how different people use course plans. There's so many different variations of it. And when I had pre-readers, I actually did um, a system where I had different boxes set up with the things that they would use, the little stickers that they would use to navigate, so they didn't even have to be able to read. They could just kind of work through their um, different things each day to
Yeah.
and I think that they use those in special ed classrooms as well in regular like brick and mortar schools. You can see some systems like that. So I think
Yep.
a whole host of different ways you can approach planner. Even it may not be an actual written planner, it may be something that looks a little bit different depending on your kids' ages and learning needs.
Yeah. And then also if them having access, whether it's their own set of plans or they know where to find them, that can serve
Hmm.
as good review for them when it comes time for that. They can kind of provide a model for note taking. I mean, there's so much effort and skill goes into the construction of the course plans. It's as soon as the students can make whatever use of them they can themselves. Like I said, the course plans are our friends. Here, let's make it your friend also. Like, let's befriend the course. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's been more than 20 years since had been taking college level courses, but I'm taking a couple master's level courses kind of for fun this fall. And the teachers, I don't remember this happening in the past. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention, but they're good about providing the rubrics, the schedule, the materials being covered. And I've just been so appreciative because I know what they're expecting and what's too much, what's not enough. And I know what's coming up so I can plan accordingly. And as we're talking about this, it's like this is what these lesson plans are like, except it can either be more kind of like as you're saying, directly to the student, maybe they're the ones picking it up, or they're a guideline for the parent who can then use those and change them or make it adaptations as they want. So what a nice, lovely sort of like you're saying, Erica, just like these kind of safety rails that are leading us. We know we're not going to fall off but we can change it. We can stop. I'm very appreciative of them more so after a few experiences in a master's class than I had been for a while, I think. But
Well, on that topic of adaptations, that can be sort of a tricky thing to figure out. But are there some generalities that we can speak to on adaptations and combinations?
So I think we are at that point, we are going back to the parents as educators, really, and having expertise in their own family and their own student dynamics and who's capable of doing what when. We talked about how the course plans are intentionally designed by grade level to give that progression for the students so that they're getting what they need and growing where they need to grow, ready for the next phase so that they have that progression. But maybe a parent will have a sense that they could combine something. And some subjects that lend themselves to that are things sometimes like religion or science in the younger years in particular. Sometimes extra things like fine arts, like music appreciation, that's very easy to combine. Sometimes literature, especially if there's a lot of read aloud kind of stuff involved. Of course, everyone can enjoy a read aloud together. Things like that can easily be combined. I think that overlap you can see in certain subjects. Sometimes history is a really good one too for that, where you can combine. But you also don't want to compromise the skills that a student might need to keep progressing or slow one of your students down from learning what they need to learn to get to the next phase. So I wouldn't combine in cases where it's going to prevent a child from getting what they need for their grade level or where they're at. So that would be a good time to keep things separate. And also, as students get into high school, I think it gets a lot harder to combine unless they're very, very close in age. If you have a student that's a couple years older, the chances of being able to successfully combine start to get dicey when you're talking about meeting graduation requirements and the progression that starts to happen in high school. So I think it's possible to do some combinations in some subjects depending on the spread of your students but that would be somewhere that I would say that's where the parent educator really needs to step in and make those decisions for their family and what's going to be successful for all of their kids individually and as a family together.
it's interesting because at least I know there's a danger in combining sometimes when you've got like children who are close together, depending on how comparative they are or competitive they are you don't want a student to kind of be walking through their homeschool experience thinking they're the dumb one of their siblings or things like, so hopefully we're not in that mode when we're learning and things, but it's kind of easy to do. It's like, well, my younger sibling is always better at this than I am, or, things like that. But boy, I could see like in especially like middle school science or middle school history, the assignments, if you're doing those, might need to be different, but in kind of being able to engage in topics and say, hey, let's do a science experiment. Everybody gather around and then we'll talk about it and it will be at different levels. But yeah, I see so much that just depends on that's where it's good that we have parents who know their children and can think about
Mhm.
that. Yeah.
I can think of two instances when we successfully combined, because my girls are close in age. So when they were in middle school doing the junior high literature course, we took on The Miracle Worker. Both girls, we did that together as one. They both studied that book because we were able to read it aloud and work on it, all of us together.
It sounds like you used kind of more of a collaborative approach there, which would be the right. I mean, that you avoid that competition sort of thing if you're like, hey, let's all work on this together. We're learning together rather than, we're doing this, but you get an A on your paper and you get a C on your paper sort of thing. It's more, yeah, that seems like the right spirit to approach it in if that's going to work.
I think we did the same with the poetry book, A Joyful Noise, when they were a little bit younger, late elementary. So we were able to read all that together. So yeah.
Nice.
And I definitely see the appeal of combining things. For the most part, we have worked out other ways to make it all work together than combining subjects. So that's very much something to work through with one's advisor.
Well, and sometimes when you start to combine two, and then you have to make adjustments for leveling for different students, depending on what it is. At that point, you start to get into almost reinventing the wheel to the
Yes.
point where it becomes like, is it even worth combining at this point? Because I'm
Yeah.
already trying, like, I'm having to create different things for different grade levels to meet everyone. I think sometimes you can, like you said, and sometimes it'll work, but in general, for us, my kids are far enough apart too that it just generally, like, my younger son could hop on to science experiments or listen into those read alouds, or like he could hop on to things, but he still needed his own stuff. And, so it didn't really, the combining didn't work so well because my kids age gap. So I think it's true. You really have to kind of look at your dynamics and say, wait, is there going to be competition here, or is there, like, what other, sometimes it's not an academic issue at all, like even pointed out. Sometimes there are other dynamics at play that make it so that you have to think, well, would it be prudent to combine these two personalities? Maybe not. you know
I definitely went in hoping that there would be ways to combine, but then I quickly figured out that that is actually that wasn't what they needed. Just like you're saying, each student needed their what they needed, and that I definitely wanted to honor that. And I tried to figure out other ways of managing the day and the sequencing of things and logistics of setups and whatever to try to make it all come together. Anyway, okay. What about adapting the plans to fit the day-to-day rhythm of family life?
So that's something where I was just thinking, um, as we're kind of looking at our calendar year, um, we can add in things that fit with whatever's going on in our family calendar. But I always like to look at learning goals for my kids for the year too. So that's maybe something I would take into the rhythm. But you can do looping with your lessons where you do certain subjects, you pick up, and then you do a loop of math, science, reading, whatever, right? And then so where you stop the next day, you pick up the loop at the next, at that subject. So you could do things like that. I like to build a lot of grace days into my academic year for our family. I just felt like it gave us a lot of space to be sick without me worrying about the
Yeah.
schedule or have an emergency or something, so that we had space for that. And for my family, we moved a number of times over the years. So I always had to build in with our calendar. I had many years where I had to build in a month or 2 months for a move. Like we would maybe start early so that we could have a really big mid-year break. Or I tried not to end late because that didn't work very well with my personality. it would give me anxiety to
Yeah.
to feel behind or something like that. But, so I think part of it too is looking at what's going to work for you as the educator and, kind of the captain of the ship. It needs to work for you too. Um, and in fact, that might be even more important than it working for your kids, because if the wheels come off,
Yeah.
with the primary educator, then I don't think things are going to go very well. So I tried to take my own scheduling preferences into account a lot, because I felt like I needed to be able to, function successfully with whatever I had planned. And sometimes even in choosing curriculum, I would choose things that I thought, oh, this will work really well for his personality. But it was something that did not work very well for my personality. That makes it very hard to teach.
Yep.
Yes.
That's important. That's a really good point.
So adjust for the whole family, of course, your schedule and your plans, and make some time for those hands-on activities. And we loved field trips. That was a huge part of our homeschooling experience. Was we did a lot of field trips, and we always tried to do pilgrimages if there were those opportunities near where we were living or when we were traveling. So we tried to build those kinds of things in, and I tried to intentionally pick out some ways that we could do liturgical living, and I felt like for me, I'm the type of person, if I had it planned, it was much more likely to actually happen than
Yeah.
I'm not someone who's great at just doing a spur of the moment thing creatively without feeling some like sort of tension in my day. So that I tried to schedule even for unknown things as much as possible. And, only as much as possible. We only have so much control over
Sure.
what happens. But yeah, and I did like to look at kind of jot down learning goals and things that I was hoping to see in my kids for the year. And then it was kind of nice to reflect back and be sort of Ignatian, you sort of an Ignatian, sort of what were the highs of the year? What were the lows of the year? Where did I feel consolation? Where did
Yeah.
I feel desolation? Usually
Yeah.
in February.
Yes.
So smart. All right, we are going to leave things here for now and continue this conversation in the next episode, where we will discuss using Kolbe's digital homeschool tools, recent improvements and upgrades to the course plans, and incorporating liturgical living into homeschool days and plans. Talk to you then.
Subscribe to the Kolbecast on your favorite podcast app so that you don't miss an episode. And let us know how we're doing by leaving a rating or a review. And as always, feel free to email us at podcast@kolbe.org.
Mary, our Mother, pray for us. St. Maximilian Kolbe, St. Ignatius of Loyola, holy saints and angels, pray for us. Ad maiorem Dei gloriam.